Thanks everyone for tuning in to check out our podcast today, Maker Connect. My name is Matt Despins, and I'll be your host for the show. With me today, we have Matt Geddie, who's a partner here at the firm, a true negotiation tactician and architect. Also joining us today is our guest, Max Nichols. Max is currently a chief revenue officer at Singenuity, and no doubt has some stories, expertise, and opinions to share. And as always, we'll just keep it fun, relaxed, and casual. Max, if you're open to it, I'd love to start by asking you to tell us just a little bit about your career and your background so listeners can get just a flavor of your negotiation experience. Also, maybe you can let us know at what point in your career did you discover the importance of negotiations and start to actually take it seriously. So, Max, we're excited to have you here with us. And with that, I'll turn it over to you to brag about yourself just for a minute. And by the way, it's the host who's making a specific request that you brag, so your humility will remain fully intact. So go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Matt. I really started sales, in a call center. And that's really where I kind of started to get a taste for things, making phone calls to sell medical supplies back in the day. And, I think I realized I had a knack for it there when they put me into a department that was, kind of steady and started to outpace and then started to 4X the rest of the teams. And eventually started to, unfortunately, get a couple of lawsuits. And they had to, I was really good at listening to my manager's coaching. So that's on him, But I started to get a little knack for it there and tried my hand at the insurance game. Got a lot of close family members that are in the insurance game. And that's really where I started to kind of learn how to work and talk with business leaders. And, trying to get into all these different companies and realize it just wasn't for me. And that's when SaaS found me. And that's kind of where the SaaS part kicked off. And it was crucial to everything there. I think pretty early on, I realized that, you can be a little bullish and things like that, but the ultimate success is going to come in negotiation. And I really think that, a lot of us have this misconception about negotiation, that that's what happens at the end, when in reality, the negotiation starts when you start getting some questions, getting some information at the beginning. And so for the last, 5-6 years, I've been negotiating like crazy and having a lot of fun doing it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you and I have that in common. I actually also have a lot of family that are in the insurance industry. So I know a bit about that game and how difficult that can be. So kind of cutting your teeth and starting off in the phone sales, the SDR type role in insurance versus where you're at now and some of your past roles in SaaS. If we look at those from a negotiation standpoint, do you feel like you were negotiating differently in the beginning of your career than you are now? And kind of like what ways, if so, do you think you were doing it differently?
That's a great question, Matt. It was all premeditated, to put it one way. When I started, it was like, this is going to happen this way, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to get them with this. And, I walked through the scenario ahead of time. And it definitely has evolved to where now when I sit down with someone, I just don't have an agenda, right? I know what my goal is, right? And we have an agenda for the meeting, but I'm not thinking they're going to run one way or the other. I'm prepared. Like, my preparation has me in a place where I can go wherever they want to take us, right? They're going to hit to the left side of the court. I'm going to go there. They're going to go right. I'm there. And so it's a really, really easy conversation. So I think the preparation, it's a little bit of a thing that comes with experience. I don't think there's any way around that. Some people have a natural knack, but it definitely is fostered and developed. And then you just sit back, ask questions, and the more they're talking, the better the negotiation goes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know what you're saying is music to the ears of our founder here, Matt Geddie. I mean, we talk a lot about planning and preparation and stuff. So Matt, I mean, Max obviously is somebody, even in talking to him today, you can see his comfort in his presentation, talking about being ready. If they go right, he goes right, left, etc. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, Max hit it right on the head, and it's refreshing to hear just a leader saying, hey, it comes down to planning, right? Negotiation is planning, preparation drives confidence drives proper execution, which then drives value for all parties involved. And so, yeah, it's again, the more planned we can be, the more internally aligned we can be to flex it. And I think what Max said too is there's a humility there of, I'm going to let the meeting run like the meeting should run, right? I think too oftentimes, especially in sales, people are like, oh, it has to go this way, so I'm trying to force it this way. But in reality, it's if you really listen and let the other party talk and discern what they're actually needing and where they want to head, then you're going to have a much more collaborative conversation. But too oftentimes, I think people, they're so comfortable saying, hey, this is how it has to go. So they try to shoehorn that conversation, and it's not collaborative. The other party leaves like, okay, well, they didn't really listen to what I said. And so, yeah, you're just kind of leaving money on the table if you're not being open and flexible. But to do that, you've got to be comfortable with just kind of the unknown.
Max, with that, is it fair to say, do you think that maybe one of the reasons in the beginning of your career that you would have been trying to structure it very specifically and, not going outside the lines because you were new and we all were, and maybe there was some fear and insecurity in the beginning? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it is for all of us. And I speaking for myself, and I know I've had these conversations with Matt Geddie, it's true for him as well. And so I want to talk a minute about fear in negotiations. And, I actually want to tie that as well into ego. So let's talk for a minute, Max, what you've seen in your career and overall what your opinions are. Do you think that a lot of people going into negotiations have some level of ego? And also, what do you think that people are most afraid of, either when they're going in or when they're in the middle of a negotiation? So I guess let's talk about ego and fear a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line. A lot of people will misconstrue confidence and ego. I think there's a certain level of confidence you absolutely must walk into a negotiation with, and that confidence comes from appropriate preparation, right? And realizing that you don't have all the answers, right? But you're good at what you do. And I think that the ego steps in when you're like, we got this in the bag. So-and-so told me we got it. I got the inside leg. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a situation and had like a secret champion or something like that that's sitting on the executive board, and the whole thing blows up in my face because I had the ego, but I really just didn't have that confidence. And I think that it's all fear-based. Like I'm a big believer in the fact that whether you think you will or you won't, you're right. Yep. And so when you step in and you're nervous about anything, like you're in trouble. But when you get to that side of like, we've got this in the bag, there's nothing that could go wrong. You're already thinking about something that you're thinking about the word wrong, and it's going to come out and it's going to fester and it's going to be a problem for you while you talk. So I think it's just really finding that line between those two, because it will blow up for you.
Matt Geddie, what are some of the strategies that the Maker Group and you talk to clients about regarding, I think sometimes, and to Max's point, it's all about being comfortable in as many situations as you can. I think that, Matt Geddie, correct me if I'm wrong, but you see a lot of times clients who are uncomfortable or scared of being uncomfortable, right? And we talk about that concept of becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Max it on the head, right? It comes down to confidence. People lack confidence. Most people don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation or an awkward conversation or challenge. They don't have the planning. They don't have the preparation. They don't think they have the power. And that's the thing is like, I mean, our benefit is we get to see all these different organizations, right? We get to see organizations in consumer packaged goods, to oil and gas, to technology, to financial services. And you talk to some of the largest brands in the world and they're like, we don't have any power. And you talk to some small companies like, we don't have any power. I'm like, okay, well, if nobody thinks they have power, where's the actual freaking power sitting? And so for us, it's really getting people in that mindset of, okay, power comes from a macroeconomic position. Power comes from a micro position. There's features and benefits that you want to kind of counteract with both. But at the end of the day, power is usually equally shared. Both sides of the table are kind of have a lacking of confidence of where they're sitting. And so it's the party that can really wrap themselves around the perception of, hey, you know what, we're confident, we're at this table for a reason, and how do we go forth? And I'm curious, Max, as a leader, how do you instill power and confidence into your teams to make sure that they're sitting at that table with the ability to kind of be comfortable challenging or be comfortable driving kind of into the unknown?
Great question.
I'm a hype man. I'm just kidding. We do have a good time around here. We get motivated, we get amped up around here, and I'm big on that. Maybe it's a little old school, but we definitely have a lot of that going on in our office. A lot of hooting and hollering and yelling, and everybody taking the time to applaud successes. That definitely goes a long way for people. I think that one of the ways that people are best prepared is practice. You can't practice enough. And so when we practice, I hate that softball. Oh, hey, how about let's talk through this, and you just you just bend over and take whatever they hit you with. Yeah. I'm not a fan of that. So whenever we're doing this, especially when I have somebody, running me at it first, because I am almost always the first role play when we talk through anything or try to do, a role play anything. I want them to hit me, and I want them to try to stump me, and I don't want them to stop until they can't. Right. And I think that that's where a big level of comfort comes from. Like, I'm willing to be humiliated, and then we work together to find a solution of how to work through that. I think that perhaps we have this misconception. You hit the nail on the head, Matt, when you're talking about comfort and like getting in a place where both of the Matts, I guess I should say, about making sure that, you're comfortable being uncomfortable. Like the way that you work through a deal and the way that you actually help someone is not by, pushing whatever you've got on the table. You have to actually be in their shoes. You have to become them. And it's always uncomfortable to be somebody new. And so if you're going to step into somebody's shoes and really understand where they're going, where they're coming from, so you can get them to where you are, right, which is what negotiation is all about, or finding that nice, healthy middle ground, you have to get to where they are. And that's always going to be uncomfortable. And that's always going to put you asking a question where you feel like, look, I'm going to be really dumb on this, but I just don't want to make any assumptions. Can you walk me through blah, blah, blah? And so I think that, it's role play, and it's realizing like there's no way around that. You just have to be in their shoes.
I loved what you said about, that's such a great point that you made about role play in a very real way. In my prior career was in law enforcement, and when you train for the worst possible case scenario, right? You don't train for somebody who's resisting arrest with pleasantries. You train for somebody who's aggressively and angrily not wanting to do what you need them to do. And so that way, when you encounter it, it happens. So in the beginning of my sales career, exactly what you're saying, Max, that's what I did. I would call up my friends and I would say, I want you to absolutely roast me. Like, I want you to be the most horrible person to me that you could possibly be, because that makes it much easier. So I love what you're saying there. And you touched on something that we talk a lot about at the Maker Group, and, the Maker framework set up by Matt Geddie, which is relationship based, right? That humility, that wanting to connect with people in a very real way. Matt, and by the way, it's Matt D and Matt G is how we normally do it, but you can just say Matt, we'll figure it out after. Yeah. So Matt Geddie, where did that come from in either your own personal business experience or your own personal life to want to create a company that had relationships and of course pre-planning at the forefront of it?
No, I mean, it's negotiation. It's that art and science, right? And that art is establishing, how do I give the other party what they need, but while maximizing exactly what I want. And that comes down to understanding the people and the psychological aspect. And then to Max's point, it's establishing a process that people can then role play in a safe environment. It's early on in my career, I was sitting down, and the CEO of this business we were talking, and someone's like, well, we don't really need this. And the guy looked at me and goes, guys, even Tiger Woods has a golf coach. And that's a line I've used over and over and over again, because even if you're able to take that approach of, hey, I need to be planned, I need to be prepared, the best of the best continue to be the best because they understand that they need somebody to come alongside and help role play and coach and support. And so it's just something that's always stuck with me is, I mean, we need people like Max, right, who's supporting and role playing with their team and focusing on that. And again, that's not the case for everyone. Again, we talk to some clients and they're like, oh yeah, we're good. My team, they're expert negotiators, been doing it for 40 years. They're good to go. And as soon as they tell me that, I'm like, my guess is you guys are leaving so much value on the table because you're so blinded by the opportunity to actually understand how do we improve, how do we take a different approach, how do we support each other. So it's just, again, it's from a leadership perspective, it comes down to being like, to Max's point, being humble, and then having that point of like, I don't care. I'm the boss. Let's humiliate this process. Let's rip it open. And that gives people that backbone as well. And that's one thing, Max, I think, curious your perspective, if you've ever worked in an environment where there wasn't that leadership support that you're implementing and instructing, and kind of where did you learn that? Because again, it's rare for leadership, and it's just unfortunate for leadership to have the backs of their sales organization. That is a rarity. And that right there eliminates people's ability to be confident. So I'm kind of curious, Max, if you've ever seen that, like, this was a terrible situation, so I never want to do that again. Or maybe in your career, you had just wonderful leaders that like, okay, this is exactly what I want to do.
Because I want to add on to that and say, Max, it is fairly rare to hear somebody say like, hey, especially in a leadership role like yours, hey, I don't mind being embarrassed, right? Like that shows some confidence. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about kind of where that comes from.
Yeah. First mistake in leadership, you're better than anyone you work with. No one's above a cold call.
Yeah.
No one's above anything. And so, I'm willing to get my hands dirty. I think that's just the way you have to approach things. And I'm going to lose my edge if I don't. Like, let's just be real about it, right? There's a lot of reasons. But Matt G, to your point with to your question about where I've seen it, I'm really big on like self-reflection. Look at myself. I've got the routines and everything. Like, I have this whole regimen I do in the morning. Drives my wife a little nutty, but she lives with it. She's, and but it works, right? Everybody's got their way to handle it. Maybe it's not a morning routine for you. That's great. But I do a lot of self-reflection. I read a lot of the self-help books, and I'm very focused on, not in a selfish way, but I'm focused on improving myself, because that allows me to give more to other people. And so the moment I stop improving me is the moment I can't help other people. And so when I was looking at, my progress, I started a gig and I had a manager, and he was awesome. And I just took off like a missile. I had a lot of the skills, fundamentals, natural capabilities. There's no way to dance around that. Yep. But we were role playing. And he's like, yeah, try this and do this and respond this way and, try this out. And then all of a sudden, like, that just stopped once you're onboarded and it's just done. And everyone else stopped. And I, for some reason, kept going. And I'm taking some time to look at this. I'm like, what in the world do we have going on here? And I started to realize that it was because I couldn't shut the role play down in my head even. I might not be talking to somebody else, but I'm like, hey, where can we go with this? What kind of objection is going to be the hardest to overcome? How would I overcome that? Like, my brain just wouldn't sleep on it. And so then I'd interact and role play with people just on my own. Like, hey, I want to try this out. I got this big call coming up. Let's go ahead and walk through this. You just give me a tough time here. And I really did have to do it myself. And it was very clear when you look at the performance metrics, what actually occurred after that. And it's not that, it's not that it was a bad organization. Their focus was just in a different place where it needed to be. Whereas my own focus, and really the difference that makes anyone a successful negotiator, gives anyone a successful career, is the ability to say, it's not someone else's responsibility to teach me how to be good at what I do. It's my own. And so I think that ownership is going to take you to a certain place. But as leaders, we really should be looking at those that we're coaching and helping along the way and mentoring, and giving them that hand, giving them, showing them that, like, hey, you can pull me off this ledge too. I'll embarrass myself. And I think that's really good, and it builds a really strong team.
You talk about that pre-planning and those repetitions, just like Matt Geddie alluded to, Tiger Woods has a coach. I mean, how many stories do we hear every day about some of the best sports figures in the world, the guys and girls who could just sit back and relax and kind of, take the easy way. But they're the first ones in the gym, the first ones on the tennis court. They're the ones taking reps when everybody else has gone home, but they're the ones that in theory don't need to, right? So to your point, Max, Well, I'm the CRO. I'm kind of the boss here, or Matt Geddie. I'm the founder. I can kind of do what I want. Although founder, we all know that life is a little crazier. But the point is that when you reach a certain status, and you clearly understand it, Max, it's about how you practice and how you prepare. And so it sounds like you really have that concept grasped. I want to dive in for a minute to something that Matt Geddie talked about earlier and ask you, Max. We talk about negotiations as both an art and a science. And I think that depending on who you talk to, you'll find some folks who feel that it's a little bit heavier in one direction than another. Some are right down the middle. What are your thoughts on that? Which one of those do you feel is more impactful to generate better outcomes, or do you think it's pretty even in terms of art or science?
Oh man, I think the science can guide the art, but in the end of the day, it's going to be practice. People talk about flow state and how they get to this point where it's just natural. There's no way to dance around the fact that a negotiation it's never going to go exactly. It might, can't say never, but there's a low likelihood that's going to go the way that you want. Love them or hate them. One of the best tweets of all time that I've ever seen, Donald Trump is like, hey, some people's art form is painting pictures and some's music. I'm totally butchering this. He's like, but mine is deals, preferably big deals. And I just like, there's no better way to talk about a sales negotiation for anyone, right?
Yeah.
It's art. You're painting a picture, and there's going to be parts in that some people look at and they're like, man, that's ugly. And then there's going to be other parts and you're like, God, that's amazing. And everyone appreciates it from a different angle, right? There are going to be negotiations where your talk time is like way up here, and they're going to be somewhere it's way down here, and you're going to have a winning result. So it's never going to be an exact science. It's human nature. There's no way to replicate the way that we interact, think, the emotions that are going to come in for certain people. And so I think that it really comes down to you can take the science and let it encourage certain behaviors. Now those behaviors become normal, and then that flow is going to come out, and it's negotiation is art.
It sounds like you're pretty in line with kind of the maker viewpoint on it. Matt Geddie, you talk a lot about it being kind of an equal balance of both. And within the maker group and the maker framework, you have designed a SaaS product with the same name as this podcast, the Maker Connect. Ding, ding. But Matt, can you talk about applying the science of the tool Maker Connect to kind of mix in with the art a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's that process, but so the process gives us a path, but you've got to have the art to be able to figure out how are we going to actually get from A to Z. And I mean, there's one story that we had a client, they were super planned and prepared for this large scale negotiation. One side of the table is like one of the global big blockbuster movie makers, and the other side was a promotional agency. And they went in, they're like, okay, this is going to be a collaborative conversation. It's going to work out great. They started the call. And the other side basically did introductions and said, this is what we want. And then just went silent for like 4 minutes. And it's like, so to Max's point, it's like, hey, we have the best plan, the best preparation ever. But if I'm not comfortable painting outside the lines and then understanding, hey, 4 minutes of silence, it's just a pure negotiation tactic. And I want to make sure that my team is, I mean, 30 seconds of silence for some people is brutal, right? 4 minutes when it's like this highly strategic, supposed to be collaborative negotiation, just totally goes to shit. But again, it's you've got to have the process, you got to get that confidence, but then you have to have that behavioral skill set and that ability to adapt and flow, because who knows what the other party's going to do. And so it's interesting. And again, negotiation, there's so many tactics out there that people will deploy and engage with. And because at the end of the day, especially in commercial world, right, it comes down to money. And so if people are motivated or can just say, hey, if I'm a little more aggressive, or I'm going to be basically shut up for 4 minutes to make them uncomfortable, hopefully they give me more value, then that's why people do it, because it works. And so it's interesting in terms of that art and science balance, but you've got to have that ability to flex, and how Max put it, like kind of painting outside the lines and really figuring out how do we get to A to Z in the most effective way possible.
Yeah,
I
I'm
know
gonna have
that
to.
Matt Getty.
I'm gonna have to give that a
Yeah, go
whirl
ahead.
there, Matt. I'm gonna next time we're negotiating for our tech stack, I'm gonna jump on, hey everybody, and then I'm gonna start a timer. I'm gonna just see if I can make it.
Well,
that'd be hard.
the question is the question is, if we try that tactic and we're in a Zoom, even in person, for that 4 minutes, are we like kind of looking like we're doing other things on our phone, or are we like hardcore, like just staring at the camera for 4 minutes? Max, what do you think about that?
Dude, I don't know. It'd be real hard to win a staring contest for 4 minutes straight. That'd be brutal.
Super awkward. I mean, just this for 4 minutes. Yeah. No, that's far too much. We all know well, I think a lot of people have heard the famous statement. Matt Geddie talks about it a lot. But Max, do you happen to know what Mike Tyson says about the plan and adjusting to it?
I think I've heard this one, but hit me with it.
Yeah. So it's everybody has a plan in a fight until they get punched in the face, right? And then it's time to your point, adapt and adjust and make some changes. But pre-planning gives you the ability to take that punch and then pivot and still execute, right? In law enforcement, we called it recognize, adapt, overcome. All right. You see that there's a problem, you adapt to it, you overcome it. Boom, boom, boom. Simple. While we're talking about the art and science of everything, I want to dive into it a bit about AI. And within the world of AI, obviously, for everybody, whether you're in the business world or just as a human being, it's kind of the topic right now. So nothing that Max, your opinion is like everybody else's, right? I'm not holding you to anything. I don't think you have the answer to AI. But in your opinion, do you see a place for AI in negotiations, either being effective or even ethical? So I guess I'd like to open it up to you and just hear any thoughts that you might have about AI as it relates to negotiation. And before you do, I'll share just one quick story here that I share sometimes. It's on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and stop me if you saw this, but there was somebody posted a picture. There was this crew working on this big, huge building, really big, and they took a big shrink wrap on the outside of it, like huge, the size of the building, and said, "Hey, Chat GPT, come finish this building."
Man.
So with that, Max, I'll turn it over to you. Any and all thoughts that you want to express about AI as it relates to negotiations in the business world? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I really haven't put much think into that application. If you want the full transparency here, but
yes, please.
The first check on it, boy, it would be really hard to fake the things that we do when we're at a table. I mean, the deep fakes are amazing. Don't get me wrong, and I think that there's a certain certain aspects that it can play, but the only thing that I really see that doing is like, I'm on a negotiation over Zoom, or maybe we're in a longer term negotiation. That AI is just keeping track of like, hey, how are they presenting this? What do they cut? What does it look like they're not talking about? I can definitely see those things coming to the table to help give you like an edge. But I don't see a place where, I could be completely wrong, right? I just don't see a place where, without us removing all ethical boundaries behind what AI is allowed to do, where it even gets close to taking care of what we're going to work through, because you're talking about a computer and you just can't bridge that gap to the human nature.
Well, you really brought up a good point, which is where I like how you said that without removing all ethical boundaries, with the inference that if we were to remove all ethical boundaries, by the way, I agree with you. If we were to remove all ethical boundaries, that perhaps AI could do some of this, but then we're into a whole other realm of humanity and stuff. So I really like how you phrased that. Matt Geddie, at the Maker Group, we are utilizing, we're going to be utilizing AI somewhat in that platform, Maker Connect. Certainly not for the art piece of it, as Max pointed out, because we can't really duplicate that. But can you talk about AI as where the value you see might be in a negotiation?
Yeah, I mean, in our software, right, you can upload a contract. It's going to spit out the things you should be negotiating based off your power state, based off the type of negotiation, based off your relationship. Like, it helps hopefully drive and ideate on creativity. But in terms of taking place of the actual negotiators, it's interesting. Walmart right now, so there's a company out there called Pactum, and they, whether or not it works or not, or if it's actually people behind the scenes and it's true AI, yet to be determined. But they basically handle long tail procurement spend. So Walmart will go to them and say, hey, we want your bot to go negotiate all the trash bags that we buy. And they roll this out, I think, to about 200 of their kind of small indirect procurement suppliers, and 75% of the suppliers came back and said, oh, this is great. But the reason I think they felt like it was great, because I think a human being thinks it's easier to negotiate with the computer, and it's more comfortable just to negotiate with a screen and click a button than it is to actually negotiate with a human being. But if you're not negotiating with a human being, you're missing on the art, and then you're also missing on the creative collaborative solutions. So I think, is there a place out there for doing the negotiation? Yes, but I think from an AI perspective, it's helping us process massive amounts of data, pulling out what are the things we should be negotiating, maybe tracking trends in the industry around pricing. But then you've still got to have that human piece who's well-trained, role-played, and planned to actually go get that value, to go create and capture that relationship. And then to like the ethical piece, did we all read the story where the U.S. Air Force did the AI drone test, and then the drone ended up shooting everything else and then came back and killed the operator? It's like, yeah, yep. Let's keep as many ethical boundaries on AI as humanly possible. Otherwise, I don't think we're all.
Yeah, I think you're touching on actually a much larger point to this. One of the beauties of business and what we do is actually the people that we meet. Like, at the end of the day, a job is a job and a negotiation's a negotiation. But I can sit down and have dinner with the company I'm talking with. I can get to know them as a person. I can learn from them. I can appreciate them. And I think that, there may be some of these, what we may consider menial. I mean, like, we automate all sorts of things around here that some people find great joy in, and that's their prerogative, right? But I think that there's going to be, have you ever seen Wall-E? Like, that's just what I think of with this. If we just go straight to the tech, like, we're all going to be floating around the ship at 300 pounds with a screen in front of ourselves. And that sounds really, really bad. But that's, we can't remove the human nature. There's a part of us that needs that. And I think that for those of us that have been in this and been successful at it, that's a fuel to our fire, is that it's not just, hey, we're going to get this deal and it's going to be great for both of us. We're both going to, in your words, Matt G, like, maximize what we're after here. But also, I now have a new friend with you. And I now have a new relationship. And I think that that's an unspoken piece that we really don't want to talk to, because maybe that's too sensitive, and like, maybe you lost the deal. Guess what? You become buddies 3 years from now, that deal's yours.
Exactly what you said, in the sense of, I do really enjoy working with the Maker Group. Not just saying that because, my boss is here in the podcast, but
thanks, Matt.
but I really enjoy it. But I will say that, my favorite part of what I do is this podcast, right? Getting to actually know people, amazing people like yourself, Max. And so I loved what you said, how, we talk about AI and negotiations as more of a can it do this, can it do that, should it do this, should it do that. But maybe, like you said, Max, we're missing something very important. Maybe as human beings, we need to do some human things, right? So regardless of what it can or can't do, maybe we need human interaction, maybe we need to actually feel like we are performing a human function. It makes sense because we've been doing it for thousands or millions of years, depending on belief structure. So I really loved what you said there. I thought it was very impactful, and it resonated and made a lot of sense. I want to, this is one of my favorite questions for guests. And I think you'll have a really unique perspective on this, because I see you as a very collaborative, kind of like the really good in the art piece of negotiation. When you think about the way that movies portray negotiations, with pounding fists on tables and anger and all these tense, dramatic moments versus what's happening out there in real life. Can you talk about some of the differences between movies versus reality? Because we all know that movies are always completely accurate and everything, right?
Oh yeah. And every negotiation is totally over in like 3 minutes of just like cuts, right? That's just it. It's like one good statement, it's over, and I put an ultimatum on the table. That is a great question. Because I watch movies and I'm like, that would be so sweet. They're long, man. These things are long, they're grueling, and that's okay, right? You get to a point where you start to understand it, and you naturally work to longer and longer cycles, inevitably by deal size a lot of times. And there's different opinions on that, but I think that the biggest differentiation you could see there is the same differentiation that every last one of us can associate with when it comes to like a love show or a love story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that is nowhere near how this thing happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew like super quick I was going to marry my wife, and it took her 2.5 years to figure that one out. Like, and so, that's the longest, greatest, and most successful negotiation in the history of mankind ever worked, period. Like,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But that's really what it is like, you're going to try one tactic and then get back, no, dude, see you later. That's not going to work for us. We want this. You're going to come back again with this, and it's going to, and they may knock you out of the park for a minute. I've had so many negotiations where it's like, hey, we're working on something. And they're like, yeah, we're going to do something else.
Mm.
And I'm like, I reach out, a few months later, hey, I hope it went well. Hope you're doing good. And they're like, dude, we fell flat on our face. Like, can we come back to the table a little bit here? And so it's never going to be cut and dry. It's never going to be these crazy cool statements that solve things. And the same way that, your relationship comes to be, you get to actually comprehend. I use the word comprehend because know and understand just don't cut it, but you start to comprehend the other person, move from their position, and really become one. And that's really how it all comes together. And that is not something that happens in 5 minutes of cuts.
Well, I love what you said there. I'm a firm believer that, any woman who has agreed to marry any of us, right? Like that's a long negotiation. And, I mean, we always get more than we deserve. I can tell that as a guy. I mean, that is the ultimate negotiation because, we often do not deserve it. Matt Geddie, do you often see, and we'll kind of, wrap this up, and I want to hear a bit more about what you're working on now, Max, but Matt Geddie, do you often see when clients are bringing you in or bringing us, the Maker Group, in, that they have this expectation of a movie type scenario, which is like, hey, I got millions of dollars on the table. I'm going to hire you on a Monday. We'll have this thing wrapped up by Friday, right? Do you see that often?
Oh yeah. People think we're 911. Like, well, for
nobody wants that.
Clients who we're more established with, like obviously they'll call us and say, hey, we're going to go take this initiative in 3 months. We want you to build the plan, the strategy, the preparation, drive the internal alignment, and then coach, role play with our people through the execution phase. But for some of these clients, like this happened to us literally last week. We got a call like, hey, public company, massive deal that we have to negotiate. We're already at the table. We need you guys to come in and basically like help us figure this out. And it's like, listen, I can provide some guidance at that point, but if we haven't prepped and planned, it's really, really difficult to change the impact once you're at the table. And so, yeah, it's not, but I would think people are like, oh yeah, let me bring in these negotiation experts and they're just going to solve this immediately. They're going to overcome all the terrible planning and preparation and preconditioning that we've done. And they're going to claw back our opening offer, which was a terrible opening offer. And they're going to help us. And it's just, it doesn't work, right? The more planned, the more detailed, the more prepared you can be, the better. And for salespeople, that's tough because I think salespeople, a lot of them pride themselves on the ability to kind of shoot from the hip, make things up as they go. But what they have to recognize is, hey, it's okay to be strategic. It's okay to kind of slow things down and process and orient it out. And that's really what we're trying to train and teach our clients to do, is to really build that negotiation process, right? Teams, it's organizations, everyone has a sales process. Very few clients have negotiation processes, but if you look at some of these out there that actually do, like the P&Gs of the world, the Chevrons of the world, these Fortune 10, Fortune 15 companies, the reason that they do is because it's process and focus oriented around negotiations. And it's not rocket science. It is simple, but it is not easy. And so that's, I mean, again, that's why we exist. But if you look at really successful organizations, even like Apple,
Yep.
they have a super detailed negotiation process. And that's what people don't recognize, right? It's sales and negotiation. Hey, we got a sales process, but now we got to mirror that negotiation process to that too. And that's where kind of that best in class methodology and organizations really stand themselves out. But it's difficult, especially because salespeople, it's probably like, oh, that feels so mundane. And it's like, all right, or you can just get to the table and figure it out as you go. And yeah, good luck with that. Well, let me know.
Talking about that internal alignment as well, Max, I'll turn it over to you, but before we chat a bit about Syngenuity, which you're going to correct me if I mispronounce that, but I know you make t-shirts about that. So as a leader, Max, is that one of the things that you're pushing for your folks, is that internal alignment so that everybody is kind of on the same playbook?
More or less. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think you hit it on the head, Matt G. I actually wrote this down. I got like I have one of those desks that you can like Sharpie on and wipe off.
Nice.
And I wrote down, it's simple, but it's
Need one
not
of those.
easy. Yeah. There's no better way to say that. It is simple.
Yeah.
You can give a framework, you can walk through. And the easy thing, it's like going to the gym, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to work the muscles. And that's the same way with everything in life. To be any good at anything you do, you got to sacrifice. And so I think that, the alignment on a team level, like you have to be dialed, you have to practice. And really when I talk to my team is that like, once you're at the table, Matt, like you said, that, hey, 911, help me recognize, adapt, and overcome, right, Matt D? Like I'm at the table
Yes, sir.
already. It's like too late to do that, right? When you're at the table, you should have already done everything that you need for the negotiation. Like you build your arsenal before you step to the line of war. And that's what we talk about. It's like you can't progress to that conversation and that part of the process without making sure you've done your due diligence ahead of time. Otherwise, you're going to get caught with your pants on the ground. And that's never a good place to be in. It never feels good. Now, you can recover from those, but the odds that you do that are just not in your favor at all. And so we're really big on making sure that we have like good positioning and everything's lined up appropriately before we step foot to talk with the decision-making party about the terms.
Well, it sounds like your team is certainly lucky to have you in that leadership role. I mean, you bring a lot of humility and talent there. Let's talk a minute about that. So first, I'm just going to turn this over to you to even say the name of the company. I'm going to try to embarrass myself. Syngenuity, and if I have that correct, can you tell our listeners just a bit about who they are, what you have going on with them, any initiatives or projects that people might want to know about?
Yeah, you nailed it, by the way. So
yes.
we're a fantastic group. We were born from the industry that we service. Such a great place to be. And we're not the norm. We're the bootstrap group. So it's really fun to be here. We are a family first, family supportive group over here. Everyone's, really big on making sure that, we work hard and we win big. But at the end of the day, we also realize, as we've talked about a lot today, that humanity piece. We're all humans. And without an appropriate balance in the workplace, all that hard work's not even worth it. And so we got a lot of good things going on over here. But most importantly, we've got a culture that just brings you into the fold and you're a part of the family for a long time to come. And we take care of everyone around here, which is something that we're really proud to be able to do.
Wow. I mean, you don't hear leaders talk about that often. So that's very impressive. What are what's some of your value propositions? I mean, what are you guys bringing to the market that folks might want to come check you out for?
Yeah. So when it comes to, the attraction and tour management space, which is the groups that we service, we bring a lot of different things. Obviously, we have a unique approach, having been in the shoes of others, trying to solve the same problems that they're solving. It gives us just a keen understanding and an honest leg up and rapport and all sorts of great things. But what we focus on is more depth. It's best stated by, we had, this talk about a negotiation. We've been in this grueling negotiation for a while. And we had this idea to let one of the parties that we're negotiating with go visit one of the locations that we operate, where our software is the backbone. And he was just like, I wish our op could run like this. And that was his response. And so it's, he's like, it's so focused on operations. And that's really where we're setting ourselves apart, is anybody can do this customer experience component. And the ones that come from the outside into the industry, they're just like looking at what they think they need. Those of us that are in the industry, we understand that it's so much more. There's people actually show up. It's not just like I purchase a ticket online or something like that. I got to show up. You want to take care of me. You want to upsell me. You want to track me. All these different things that we're able to bring, and we do it in a singular ecosystem that's designed to be intuitive. And so that's really the big change that we're bringing to the table. It's natural and it's consistent from start to finish. And overall, it's just going to be something not only for your customers, but for your employees and administrative staff. It's going to offer them an experience that matches the experience of your brand.
Well, that matches, I think, who we've seen here today in meeting with you, Max, which is, you're a team who not only put your team members first, but that resonates out to how you treat your customers, putting them first. And, it looks like your offerings are holistic 360 and they're pretty intuitive. Is that an accurate way to describe Singenuity?
You nailed it. You cut my 2 minutes to 10 seconds. I appreciate that,
Matt. Happy to help. So, with that, we'll wrap up here today. I just open it up for any closing thoughts from first you, Matt Geddie.
No, I mean, the overall theme I've heard a lot is just like, it's culture, right? It's culture of from a leadership perspective and that culture drives that negotiation outcome and that trust. And yeah, I mean, Max, kudos to you to kind of be really focused on the culture of your team and the organization. And it's clearly why you've been so successful within your career, because it's been a heavy focal point.
Yep. I definitely, I got that as a takeaway too. Max, any other closing thoughts from you, sir?
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate the time, Matt D, Matt G. And what y'all are doing is pretty fascinating. That AI thing perked my ears, Matt G. So that's a cool take. I'm excited to take a deeper dive on that with y'all.
Cool. Awesome. Well, it was, we sincerely enjoyed having you. Your humility, your intellect, your passion for it resonated pretty clearly through. So it was a pleasure here, and I definitely learned a lot, as I always do. So thank you to you both.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. I got to put one plug in here. That there's no successful negotiator. We talked about this a little bit. There's no successful negotiator without a spouse at home that has their back in what they do. You just can't come to the table ready without it. So I got to put a plug for the wife because she makes it happen. So,
like I said earlier, we always get so much more than we deserve, right? If us as guys got what we deserved, we would all be in big trouble every single day. So kudos to your wife as well for being a support system for you.